Welcome, Kushti Divas, Lacho Divas. We are so happy that you've joined us this evening for our event, looking at depictions of Romani and Traveller women on screen. So welcome to our panelists and welcome to our audience, wherever you're watching this, on computer, phone screen, coffee shop, bedroom. It's great that you've took the time to join us in what we hope will be a really interesting conversation. So my name is Lisa Smith and I'm a youth editor and producer at Travellers Times. We are a national organisation that aims and works to really try to combat negative mainstream media representation of Romani and Traveller people by putting forward accurate information for and by the community that it seeks to serve. So today we're going to be doing a live screening of a film called We Are Here that was produced earlier this year. And then we're going to be hosting a panel discussion where we'll be in conversation with Romani and Traveller women who are working in the creative industries and finding out more of how they have and how they're continuing to, through their own artistic practices, counteract, actually create counteractions through their own forms of self-representation. So we've also got a range of people joining us, which we're super happy about. And one of the questions that we want to have in our minds throughout this, and a question that we will really consider at the end, is how can we improve representation of Romani and Traveller people in the media generally? And how can we raise visibility of Romani and Traveller people who are already working in the creative industries and support more young people from our backgrounds into those pathways? There'll also be an opportunity for everybody to interact with us. So please feel free to use the chat box that we've got, and we'll be regularly monitoring it. So at any point, if you have a question or a suggestion, we would love to hear from you. But without further ado, I'm delighted to now introduce our panelists. We have a powerhouse tonight of experience and knowledge. So the first person that I'd like to introduce is Frances Roberts-Riley. Frances is mixed heritage Welsh Gael Gypsy English and is a direct descendant of Abraham Wood, the notable family of Welsh Gypsy tribal harpists, fiddlers and storytellers. She's also an award-winning documentary filmmaker, a poet, an author and a radio producer. She's currently also a podcaster, a harpist and a storyteller, a Canadian contributor for Travellers Times, and currently she is executive producer of Watershed Writers, a radio documentary series on women writers and writing. Her 50-year career in the media began at the BBC in London. After 5 years as a producer at the CBC in Canada, she formed her own production company. Frances's focus is on women's and human rights, perinatal issues for all with Romani Gypsy ethnicity. She also holds a BA in English at the University of Toronto, achieving an education that was denied to her in the UK. True to the dysphoria, she is an international Romani writer. Her poetry collection, Paramisha, was published by Cinnamon Press in Wales in 2020. Her poems are published in anthologies in Canada, the US, UK, Wales and Europe, and soon in Wagtail, the Roma Woman's anthology published by Eriac. Her essays are published in the Journal of Critical Romani Studies and Stone to Stone Anthology of Romani Women Writers. In 2019, she became founder of the John Roberts Heritage Fund to keep alive the Welsh Gael language, heritage and culture. In collaboration with Bob Lovell, they produced Shaiwaka Romanes, a course of 22 recordings of Bob speaking everyday Welsh Gael jib. Wow, thank you, Frances, for being with us today.
Yes, hi.
The next panelist that I'd like to introduce is Millie Cooper. Millie is a Goldsmiths University of London graduate who studied performance, politics and society. She creates theatre and film using stories and interviews from the women in her life, as well as other strong Romani women in the UK. Her aims as an artist are to deconstruct the negative media stereotypes created about Gypsy women in order to create a platform in which women can share their experiences and ultimately have their voices heard. Throughout her childhood, she found that the lack of positive representation of Romani women on screen she found confusing and frustrating, and witnessed how this fueled a platform discrimination and misinformation of her culture that didn't really represent the powerful women that she grew up with. Her debut documentary, Conversations with Romani Women, highlights issues surrounding racism, discrimination, and the media, and she puts forward practical recommendations as how to a community we can work to combat that. And at the end of this session, when we finish at 7:30, we'd also like to invite our audience to watch that film, and we'll be screening that, Conversations with Romani Women. So have that in mind. Welcome, Millie. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So our next panelist I'd like to introduce is Rosemary Cisneros. She's a researcher, dancer, choreographer, sociologist, and curator who works at the Centre for Dance Research at Coventry University. She works closely with the Roma Archive, European Hip Hop Studies Network, and many NGOs. She has developed the Romani Dance History course with the Barvalapi University run by Ariak. She also leads various EU-funded projects which aim to make education and arts accessible to vulnerable groups and ethnic minorities. As part of her cultural heritage projects that bring dance, sight, and digital technologies together. Her PhD is in sociology with a focus on Roma women, intersectionality, dialogue, feminism, and communicative methodologies, and was awarded a summa cum laude. She has started her own production company, Rose Assassin Film Production, which works on the Society for Dance Research Oral History Project, and also runs the Dancing Bodies in Coventry project. Her dance films have been screened in the UK, the US, Colombia, Mexico, Greece, Cyprus, and Germany. And in her medium-length documentary, she won Best Documentary from the UK in 2016. She has also managed major EU-funded projects and local City of Culture partnership projects. She sits on the academic journals as an editorial assistant, and those include the Journal of Embodied Practices, International Journal of Romani Studies, and One Dance UK's Hutfoot online magazine. Welcome, Rosa. The next panelist I'd like to introduce is Teresa Pine. Teresa is a founding member of the Equity Committee that represents Gypsy, Roma and Traveller creatives in the industry. She studied drama at Goldsmiths College and has an MA in Arts Management from Birkbeck College in London. She is also currently a participant on the Liverpool Everyman and Playhouse Theatre's writer programme and will direct an excerpt of one of her own plays there in a new writers showcase in September. She has recently attended a 3-day workshop for emerging directors from underrepresented backgrounds at the Almeida Theatre in London. As an actor, she has most recently performed in the film Crystal's Vardo, directed by Susanna King of Friends, Families and Travellers. As the older Crystal, during lockdown, she's been working as a healthcare assistant at a local hospital whilst developing her writing and directing career. Welcome, Teresa. Great to have you with us as well. Wow. So next, I'd like to move on to the film screening. We are here, and this is a film really taking a superficial look or a glance at depictions of Romani and Traveller women in cinema historically, and then taking an opportunity to ask women today how they feel about more contemporary depictions of them. So I hope you enjoy.
Come closer, tell me what you see. Rebel fighters, our people are many, till my dying day.
The presence of Romani and Traveller women on screen is as old as cinema itself, with moving images of us being projected as early as 1897 in Britain. Since then, in TV, film and pop culture, we've been used as characters to evoke fear, create elements of mystery, and be the object of desire, possess mystical powers, or have a habit of criminality. My name's Lisa Smith and I'm youth editor at Travellers Times, a magazine dedicated to combating negative mainstream media reporting by providing a platform for self-representation and ethical journalism.
Wait for our Chevys.
It struck me when I started filmmaking that depictions of us in film and TV were often focused on using our perceived gypsiness as a tool to create feelings of the other through the romanticisation or vilification of us. Growing up, I don't remember really seeing any complex Romani characters on screen, and it got me thinking about the issue of representation. So I've decided to have a chat with some Romani and Traveller women to see how they feel they're portrayed in the media.
There's the aggressive, ugly, loud, uneducated gypsy woman that is a caricature, or you have the hypersexualized Esmeralda-ification, like I like to call it, like where you can only occupy these two spaces and it's completely centered on the male gaze. And they've taken that not from our experiences or from our testimonies, but essentially from what white cultured people have written. And I think that that's the issue, is that they're wanting to portray the culture but without Romani people or traveller people in the conversation. Like, I think that we as Romani women represent so many people in our lives who haven't had the opportunity or the platform to showcase their strength and their intellect and importance.
And I think it's important for young people, for girls especially, to grow up and know that a traveller woman is many things.
I think for me, I remember being 15 and watching my Big Fat Gypsy Wedding and thinking, none of that is reflective of who I am. And at that time, I was at college, I was playing rugby, I was doing all of these things that weren't anything like the portrayals we see in the media. You're constantly battling against that. That was shown nearly 10 years ago, and people still bring it up.
You've got people that are going to work holding down jobs. You've got women that are going to university and studying, and they're trying to progress further somewhere and to go to a higher level. Could be doctors, could be nurses, could be anything. But I feel like it's not being projected right into the world to show what we are, how good we are. Girl power and all that.
So speaking to the women so far, it seems that narrow depictions of who Romani and Traveller women are on screen means that even when we are visible, the range of contributions that we make to society seem to be missing. So with this in mind, I've next decided to have a catch up with some other women who are working in the creative industry to find out more about how they're attempting to redefine the narrative through their own creative practice.
First piece of work I created was a short film centred around my great-granny Minty Smith. And my mum has always been interested in her family tree, and she was the one who showed me the documentary Where Do We Go From Here? From 1969. It was my great-granny who was the forefront of the conversation, and she was walking and talking you follow me, I'm right, and you do what I say, and she was completely in control of her segment. It really made me think about who she was, and I took massive inspiration from her and her resilience, the sort of power she had through her creative means, and this really, really changed my ideas of women in our culture. It shouldn't matter to others what sort of life we decide to lead as women, or a spectacle made out of it for the entertainment of others, like we've seen in harmful documentaries over the years.
A fundamental piece of human expression, what it is to be human, is to tell stories, in my opinion. I think for me as well, being able to break down that barrier of you can talk about what it's like to be, especially for me, what it's like to be Romani, and share those stories that are specific to being Romani, because their experiences are different, their culture is different, and to tell stories about that culture without fear.
I let the moon guide me, because it moves in circles like we do.
I guess I started singing when I was a really small child, like on the tops of our kitchen table. Within the Traveller and the Romani community, to give a song is such an appreciated thing. Like, music and song is really a big part of the culture, and therefore, like, if someone says, "Oh, give us a song," you're not going to say no. So I always was encouraged to stand up and to sing and celebrated for that. And being a dual heritage British Romani has really influenced me as a person, and also influenced the work that I've done musically and in theatre. My first big break in the theatre, and the first time I ever combined art and activism, was in the production Roma Army. As far as I'm aware, it's the first time that a cast of mostly Romani actors from across Europe have been given the space on a national stage to tell their stories and to occupy that space. It's essentially about rebranding Roma. It's about reclaiming this identity which has been systematically stripped from us. The advice I would give to people from the DRT community for like breaking into the arts or doing it as a career is, of course we can do this. Like, we belong here. Do it. Break in. Like, bust the door down. You deserve to be there, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
We are here, and we always have been, but for too long our voices have been sidelined. But through collaboration and allyship, our stories are being brought to a wider audience.
I think being a Romani woman in British society is being a consistent voice for not only yourself, but for generations of women that have had voices and not been represented.
And it means to encourage our inner power and build each other up beyond the societal lens that's put in front of us.
I think it really does mean being brave and being fierce.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed that film, and it's given us plenty to discuss now as we go into our panel discussion. The first person that I'd like to come to is Frances Roberts-Riley, to hear about your perspectives in TV and film, because I know you have such experience over the last 50 years, and it would be interesting to get your perspective. Frances, I can't hear you.
Okay, there I am.
Perfect. The floor is yours.
Frances Roberts-Riley. Thank you, Lisa. I'm sitting in Canada right now, and I will be telling you a lot about what the 50 years has been in the experience of women in the media, from my early experiences to now, in which time I've had to learn 4 technologies because that's evolved over that time. So I'm just delighted to be here, and I'm very impressed with the bravery of the younger women, Romani women in the media these days, and I want to say bravo to that. So in the tradition of my Welsh Romani culture, I'm a storyteller, and also using some of the contemporary tools these days of television, podcasting, filmmaking and radio. And I've been doing this for 50 years. But I stand here today on the shoulders of the Romani women in my family. It's my privilege and an amari putav, an honoring to their strong spirits, resilience and fearlessness that I am actually here. I began my media career in 1972 at the BBC, leaving school at 16 in 1961 without any GCEs. How did I, 11 years later, have the determination to say, I can do this? The answer lies in my immediate family. My father was a Welsh tenor who sang under a gorgeous non-Romani stage name and never once used his Roma identity when singing in public. Who ever heard of a gypsy opera singer? When he landed a role at Sadler's Wells in London, he took me to rehearsals and I saw how an opera is staged in the theatre. And when I saw it front of house, I was hooked by the magic. I had to make some canny moves though. I was living in Ealing and I researched employment agencies that sent office workers to the BBC. Now you might ask, why office work? Well, 50 years ago, the only way a woman could get into the BBC was with shorthand and typing. However, as a Romani, I had to resort to my own native intelligence because I didn't have the money to attend a secretarial school. So I bought a book and taught myself shorthand, and the rest is history. Looking back now, I see that I was a pioneer in what was essentially an old boys club with an Oxbridge cabal. It wouldn't be the first time that I would have to fight the battle in giving women a voice and establishing roles in the creative field. As brutal as it was, I wasn't settling for less. And after 5 years, I left and emigrated to Canada, where I landed a producer role at the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, right off the boat. I was to go on to founding my own production company, specializing documentaries about women and human rights. And along the way, I earned a university degree at the age of 51. Here we are. So I was watching the clips and I did it 2 or 3 times because so much of it was familiar and I can identify with the issues that are highlighted even in my own work over this period of time. So the first example of depictions of women in non-traditional jobs was made in the 1980s when there was an absence of any imagery depicting any women in leadership roles. We needed role models. I was commissioned to write and direct a documentary for the Ontario Provincial Government's Women's Directory, and I'm guessing they couldn't find an ad agency with the chops to do it. We had an all-women crew, and on location, we filmed women working in air traffic control, on building sites, in carpentry and plumbing, in a repair shop, working as engineers, as an architect and a lab technician. More Than Just a Job was distributed throughout our high schools to encourage girls to hang in with mathematics and science for higher paying jobs, and it won an award. The next example is of Erasure and Silencing. It's a documentary commissioned by a women's teachers union to document the story about what happened when women's rights were erased from Canada's constitution. Our rights had been bargained away in a backroom deal by the good old boys. The objective was to interview all the activists working at grassroots level and tell the story of their efforts, which were, after a parliamentary debate in the House of Commons, was successful in embarrassing the Canadian government into reinstating women's rights. The documentary, A Constitution for New Rights for Women, was distributed throughout Ontario high schools so that girls could learn a history that was to be quickly erased and forgotten, and to understand how women's rights can be taken away at the stroke of a pen. In the last 5 years, I've turned my attention to telling the story of women, Romani women and children, and celebrating my Welsh Kali heritage. I established a heritage fund in the name of my ancestor, John Roberts, to keep alive what's left of our Welsh Kali language, music, heritage, and culture. Traveller's Times asked if I could help with co-writing a story about the snatching of 2,200 Scottish traveller children who were trafficked to Canada as British home children. And they were some among the 100,000 that were sent here. The Journal of Critical Romani Studies invited me to write a personal essay. I chose to write about reclaiming the Welsh Carly story of my great-great-grandfather, Edward Wood, who was the subject of the so-called Gypsy scholars' use of essentialism and scientific racism in telling our story for us. In October 2020, this is my poetry collection, Paramecia, was launched, and it was to redress the imbalance. I wanted to tell our story of these lost Romani voices, the stereotyping and the racism. And in support of Drive to Survive campaign, a bookseller listed my book as a resource for those wanting to read about genuine Romani culture. And a poem from the book was read at the Parliament Hill demonstration by my cousin, Alison Hume. And this year, in the middle of the pandemic, I'm the executive producer of a series of 10 radio documentaries on women riders. And I did this because they don't get the exposure and publicity in the mainstream media their talents deserve. So what the thread that runs all through this is a thread of power. And I don't want us as women to be shy of using that word and getting it. We really need a seat at the table. So I'm just saying that there's a power dynamic operating, and we need to ask which stories are valued most. Where does power reside? Where does power reside? To tackle these two questions, we need a space for mourning our erasure and silencing, a space for demanding justice with activism and solidarity, a space for bolder leadership, accountability, and most precious of all, a space for community. We need to fill the space within us and remember who we are. So yes, after 50 years, I'm still here and we're here and telling our story and correcting all these stereotypical and unjust depiction of Romani girls and women for however long it takes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frances. There's so much there, so much detail as well, and so interesting how, from a Romani woman's perspective, you have been working so hard and successful at working on women's rights generally. And that just highlights the intersectionality, the diversity of our people, because often, as you said, we're seen in very narrow, singular ways when we're generally represented in the media. And the contributions are just so much broader than that. And your story is, to me, one of real resistance. It really is. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'd now like to move on to Rosa.
Hello. Wow, it's hard to follow after going after yes, the film and Miss Frances. So thank you so much to everyone for having me. It's really humbled to be here and to be part of this conversation. And I think the work I'm doing with the company Rosa Senses film production company has several strands to it, but reflecting on the film we just watched, and what was already said, a lot of the work we're doing is about celebrating different voices and celebrating women and lifting each other up and showing that diversity. And we do that in a number of different ways, but one of the things is working with the community, co-creation, and ensuring that when we're part of a project, it's not me, Rosa, it's us, what do we want? And so at every point, from beginning to even the screening, we work together to decide how, and not only thinking about the actual output, but what is that process and how do we honor our traditions of coming from a community, of listening to our older people, our elders? How do we include everyone? Because that's part of the community as well. The kids are around, family, you know, and how do we bring that into the process of making the film or the podcast or whatever that might be? And also, how is that honored and respected in the actual final film? And then how do we share that? How do we disseminate that to a wider audience? So it's not only for Roma or non-Roma, but it's for everyone. And, you know, what we hope is that you can find something in the work we're doing, because we hope there's something for everyone. And I think that's what your film, Lisa, you know, really celebrates, is women, the diversity. It's not, it's challenging as well. And that's something also that I hope we're doing with Rosa Sensis. Some of the work we've done, so with my dancer kind of hat and training, I've had to, the way the company started was actually, I got tired of, I like the autonomy that, you know, you know, and I think that's also part of our community, is that having that autonomy, and, you know, we just kind of try and we do. And so that was something for me that felt, okay, what does this mean to have a production company? What does it mean? And I kind of learned a lot as I'm doing it. I'm still always learning. You know, tech changes. You also said that, Ms. Francis, that technology is always changing, software. But that's not, of course, it's difficult and it takes time, but I felt I could do this. I don't need someone to teach me. I can just figure it out. It might not be the best, but it's something, and it's the voices of us, of the community. So that's a big part of it. And through that, just kind of learn by doing, and also allowing myself to bring, as I say, choreographing with the camera. How do you know, what is it, the attention to details? How do we, whether it's screen dance or a documentary, or if we're doing something that might be linked to work in higher education, how is it, where's the attention to detail, and how do we create movement and flow with the camera? Because you know, you have to be very mindful that those four corners are capturing something, and that's really powerful, and that could be really great and transformative, or really negative and detrimental to the community, to whatever's in that frame. So, you know, I think that filming and the company, we try to be very mindful, honoring creativity, honoring voices, but still being very, very critical and reflective. So at every point, you know, I'm asking myself, I'm asking the team, but why? Why are we doing that? Why does that exist? How are we trying to offer a counter narrative? What does that mean? And that process is forever, because, you know, there's always a community, or there's, you know, and it's about not trying to make sure that I'm responding to someone, but that we are being true to ourselves and to where we are in the moment. So, you know, I might not like something I made 10 years ago, but that's where I was 10 years ago, and that's enough, and that's great. And it's also, you know, respecting that we're always learning, we're always processing. And that's something I loved about your film, Lisa, that, you know, the people talking about things that are very current, very now, and that's the reality, and that's important to document. It's important that we have some, you know, we have a platform to speak those truths and to honor that, but on our terms. And so again, that feels one of the main parts of the company and the work I'm doing. And the last thing is looking at some maybe topics that might not be always, you know, the go-to, like disability or women's bodies on screen, or you know, how is it that we can challenge some of those maybe sexualized or highly stereotypical images in a way that's not attacking people's opinions, but offering them an opportunity to reflect on that. And, you know, as a mom, I've learned that the best thing I can do is model the behavior. So I could tell my daughter everything 100 times, but unless I'm actually doing that and reflecting and modeling what I want her to learn or to start to have a conversation with me, it doesn't change. So in a way, that's the other kind of strand that, you know, how can we look at maybe even some taboo topics within the community, but in a way that's gentle, that's soft, that's you know, a process and honoring that process. So yes, those are the main parts of the company and of my work, and really just of honoring where I'm at and who's around me in co-creation with people. So yes.
Thank you, Rosa, for sharing the values behind the production company that you run, and this sense of awareness in everything that you're producing. And as Frances highlighted as well, both that's coming out is these power dynamics that are at play when we're not in control of telling our own stories.
Yeah.
And both as women, it seems already that you've taken matters into your own hands to really reclaim that narrative in a way by founding your own production companies and creating your own content. So like you said, Rosa, it's on your terms. And a question that comes to mind to me is, as like Romani and Traveller women as filmmakers, we are, for so many people I speak to, really considering and aware of how we're portrayed, in what way, the different angles, what they mean, how it's represented. And then I often think, are we at a disadvantage in comparison to, say, for example, a white middle-class male with privilege? Are they constantly having a thinking process about how another white middle-class male is portrayed or how they're being seen? And I don't think it's the same heavy type of burden that we have as filmmakers. And I think that's interesting in itself, because we're not just having we're not just creating our work or a passion. What we're doing is constantly having to be aware of the cliches, the stereotypes that already exist, and to be mindful of how we're not really perpetuating them. And this is something that I think is an additional burden in some way, but a power and a superpower, I would say. And that was just reflecting back on your podcast series, actually, Rosa, where it was, so what does it mean to be a Romani woman? And I think it was what the answer was, to be a Romani woman, it's my superpower. Like, that is my superpower, because we're coming at the world from a completely different angle and perspective, to say from another minority group, or you know, or some member of the minority population. It's that experience and perspective is unique. And you both have created platforms to honor that and to present those, you know. So yeah, thank you very much. I'd love now to move on to Millie, and the floor is yours. Welcome, Millie.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very early on in my early career compared to everyone else here. So I'm in the presence of greatness at the moment. So thanks for having me. Yeah, so I created my documentary Conversations with Romani Women out of kind of a frustration of growing up and watching like these so-called documentaries that kind of explained about Romani women or traveller women, but it just didn't represent anything that I ever grew up with. And that was kind of echoed again in Lisa's film. As coming from like a younger perspective, a younger generation, we've all grown up around My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding and stuff like that. And it was kind of frustrating. And then going on to uni, and I had the same thing again. And that was years ago that show was on, but that still is echoed in society. And people were shocked that I was at university as a Romani woman. They were like, well, aren't you supposed to be at home? And I was kind of like, no, it's not. But even if I was, why is that such a shock to you? I think that's kind of where my work's based. It's like, no matter what we choose as Romani women, we should be respected and we should be allowed to do that, whatever. Oh, I'm a bit nervous. Sorry, I should go back to my notes. Yeah, so looking at the film that I created, it's an ongoing project. So I'm hoping to expand it further, get more interviews, as it's only a short film at the moment. And I'm hoping to interview more of my aunts and get another generation's perspective on how they feel about it. And I've already done a few scripts when I was training at uni. I did a verbatim play where I interviewed my aunts and my grandmother about their experiences growing up being Romani women, and it was very like romantic, them in the hop fields kind of growing up, strawberry picking and hop picking throughout the summer. And I love those stories. I love hearing them growing up, and I think that's something that we need to share as well. That needs to be represented too. And it's all very well like we have the negative depictions of us in the media, but I think those stories are so important. That's what I grew up with. We are storytellers as Romani women, like as the Romani population and the traveller population, that is intrinsically a part of us. So yeah, that kind of sparked conversations with Romani women. I think this is my time now. I had the support at Goldsmiths to kind of do the film and do it in the right way that I wanted to. As Goldsmiths is a fairly liberal uni, I think if I went anywhere else, I would have kind of struggled to do a project like this. And that's not to say it didn't come up with a little bit of backlash, but not that it's controversial, but some people there's just not enough knowledge out there. People that aren't a part of the community don't have enough knowledge, and what they do have, the majority of the time, is incorrect, or they don't know where to look. So yeah, that's kind of why I created the documentary, and why my art is based on changing that. And I know for me, if I was when I was younger, if I had films like Lisa's film, or like my documentary that I've created, that was out in the public and was supported more than documentaries that were created like My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding, I think that would have been hugely inspiring for me as a kid. And I would have felt like I am like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is who I am. I can create things, I can build art, and I can do it whilst including my heritage and my culture. So yeah, that's.
Thank you so much, Millie. I think the documentation that you're doing now, and it sounds like you're almost creating an archive, you know, of stories, of history, and capturing that is so important. And what's coming from everybody is like the determination and drive to preserve that history, to preserve our culture in a really meaningful way, to move forward. But also, like you touched upon, the power of positive representation of young people, young Romani and Traveller people, seeing themselves in a positive way represented on screen. And it makes me think that the lack of that, how do our young people from our communities internalize that when they're only seeing themselves demonized on screen in a very narrow way, you know? And what impact does that have on somebody's, a young person's mental health, or how they view themselves and their relationship with themselves, I think. So thank you for your contribution. There was so much there. Right, now I would like to move on to Teresa Pine. Welcome, Teresa.
Hi, hello.
Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to say hi and thank you. And again, there's that saying, isn't you stand on giant shoulders, to people like Francis who went before, and to Millie, don't let this hair and face confuse you. I'm really early in my career, and that's emerging, and I think that's a big female thing and a class thing, because as younger women, I had a child to raise and a family, and it's only as a mature student that I'm now emerging in my career. So yeah, my thing here today is I'm one of the founder members of Equity, the union for actors, creatives, set up, well, people from the communities went to Equity and said there needs to be some representation, rather than Equity setting it up and saying, come join. The other way around, there was a meeting, it seems like a million years and another lifetime ago now, in January 2020 in the Young Vic Theatre in London. And I kind of gate crashed it, and sort of demanded an invitation, and went along and met some amazing people there. And the committee was formed from that. And you might ask why it's needed. The creative arts are very, as Millie was saying, Goldsmiths, etc., is where I went as well, is liberal, etc. But you don't actually have to scratch very low beneath the surface to still find those stereotypes and oppositions, and even the most people who would say that they're totally open to diversity and inclusion, that diversity and inclusion doesn't necessarily include us. It's for example, there's a play going on at the moment. It's a revival of a play. It's just about to open, Jerusalem, which went on 10 years ago in London, and to rave reviews and brilliant actors. Some of the actors in there, are amazing actors. Some of the script is nothing but offensive. And if you took any other ethnicity and used that script toward them, there would be placards and people waving things in the streets outside the theatre. But it's going ahead, and tickets upwards of 50, 60, 70 pounds, and I'm sure it will sell out. So that's why Equity need the committee to do what they're doing, as well, to tackle the documentaries that tend to be on Channel 5 all the time, that we've all seen and whatever. What is it? Why do they keep making them? But there's that stereotypical stuff that's just constantly still there. So that's why Equity set up to challenge that, and also to challenge that in the wider media, and also to be a place where people from Gypsy, Roma, Traveller, and now expanded to include show people and bargees, to have a place to say this is, ironically, I've not met with those people who formed the committee with me since January because of COVID, but we've met an awful lot online. So to say have a place, it's not a physical place, but have a home within the creative industries. And anyone's welcome to join. We actively encourage, I can never say this word, hierarchical. There, I got it out. So there's no hierarchy to it. There's no, one of the founder members is the lovely Emily Conn, who was in your film. But we welcome anyone to join, any ally, anyone who is just interested in what we're doing. And there's the saying, which I think comes from, has been used quite frequently within disability communities and disability activism, which was nothing about us without us. And it's that kind of ethos is you can make what you think is the best TV and sympathetic, or a sympathetic script or whatever, but with the sensibilities now, would I write a script purporting to be from a young Black woman? No, because I don't live her life. I couldn't possibly. So it's that we're just appealing to people who make culture, who make films, TV, stage work, to just enter a conversation with us, to and not just us, the people on the committee, but everyone. That's why we kind of want to throw the doors open and say, please join, just to open the conversation and just to break down some of those stereotypes, some of those cliches, which are ludicrous. And again, you think we live in a liberal, quite understanding culture, but it's I live quite near the sea, and at the moment it's swamped with people bringing caravans down, and they're okay, they're fine because they're on holiday, and they, yeah, I won't go off down that road, but it's just other people who come in different caravans and stay differently, and the local press and the local paper were quite blatant, and if you would again to do that about any other ethnicity, you'd probably end up in court, but it's fair game. So anyway, I'm waffling. I do waffle. I tend to waffle. But that's, so I'd encourage anyone who's working in the creative arts or just supportive of the creative arts to just Google Equity or email Equity, and you'll be able to find us, and please come join.
Thank you, Teresa. I think you really highlight to a level the lack of knowledge, I suppose, about our communities in society generally, but the importance of having Romani and Traveller people included in productions about Romani and Traveller people. And the film production Jerusalem, this is a massive film production, and yet here we see how underlying racism, I guess, in a form is still accepted in a way. So equity and the work that they're doing sounds great. And I just wanted to check, how can people access that? They can go on the Equity's website and find out more to join?
If you contacted Equity, they'd have details, and they can, we're an official Equity committee, they can send you in the right direction. And also just like to add that it's not just the people making work in, the writers, the producers, whatever. We need everyone. We need the men and women behind the cameras, holding the sound booms, all these kind of career paths that are not normally standard, all the the making of the costumes, the making of everything. Just there shouldn't be a single door that's not open. And yeah.
Thank you, Teresa. We've now had some questions coming in, so I'm gonna, now we've heard of all our panelists, open the floor to our audience. We've had a few come in already, and the first question, and this is open to any of our panelists, is the question is, do you think that Romani and Traveller women working in film and TV often like to remain invisible, and what can be done to change that?
I will answer, if that's all right.
Please.
I think, one, we're in the 21st century, so for us to even be like, oh, I have to hide my Romani identity, is a really sad thing. And I think that is on the onus of employers and things to make the space for people to be able to declare their ethnicity and be very open about that. Also, it's personal preference. If someone doesn't want to declare that, then that's fine. But I think we should be proud, and we should be able to speak about our ethnicity openly.
Thanks, Millie.
It's a tricky one because I agree with you, Millie, that we should be proud, but there's also, we know that once you claim that, for me, that's been something I still question and grapple with and struggle with, because then am I pigeonholed into one thing? Do I become then the person that that brown girl that everyone's going to talk about equality and diversity? And it does happen, and indeed, a lot of my work does focus around women representation. There's a lot in digital technologies and dance, contemporary dance, ballet, but people sadly do kind of just remember the flamenco or the this or the that. And it's tricky. I'm glad people come to me when they do, but also there's more to me. So I use it as an opportunity to, well, now I'm strong enough to claim an identity and to say that out loud. Maybe I wasn't, 10 years ago. And it's a process. So, it's just about, again, modeling the behavior. And if something does happen, because it does, at work, or it's just about owning that, sharing that in a way where it's a teaching moment. So I get it, and that's a great question, because I think people should have the permission to decide if they want to share it or not. And it shouldn't matter either way. If they do, if they don't, it's up to them. I'm Rosa, who happens to be A, B, and C, but I'm me. And that is a lot of things. I'm not just one thing. So, and I also like the flexibility of being able to have, to go into maybe a space and say, yes, I'm this, and it not be so charged. And to, also kind of say that it shouldn't matter. But sadly it does in some places. So it's a tricky one. Okay.
Just second everything you just said. and what Millie said as well, just totally second all of that.
I've been talking on my radio show with women writers who have ethnicities that are not white. And one of the little bits of things that you have to be aware of in using the hashtag diversity is the hire that is the one that is the token person. And they tell me that when things get awkward, you know, when they start resisting, when they start demanding, pushing back, questioning, the gaslighting starts. Yeah. And quickly they have to realize that they're there just because they're like, they're window dressing, you know, for a workplace where it's predominantly white, and they have to survive and struggle in that. So I would just say that just beware of the diversity hashtag, and beware that you're the one who's been chosen to represent, say, Rosa, just all colors and, you know, characteristics and identities of just one ethnicity.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Francis. The next question that we've had come in is, do you think there is or can be a difference to how Romani and Traveller people are portrayed in drama versus documentary? That's an interesting conversation.
Well, in a documentary, and I did this earlier on with just interviewing women, but there was no prescient narrator. There's no one explaining it all to us. The questions were asked off camera by me, and the answers were edited together in such a way that these women had their voices and told their stories. And that was a more effective way of getting to some truths and to making sure that these women were able to be seen and heard. Now, in a dramatic setting, you have a script. So that's where it starts. And so for me, that's where we need a seat at the table somehow, through Ofcom or through how they work their commissioning framework. But we need a seat at the table, and we need to have women who aren't afraid to go for power. You know, it's not a dirty word. You can use it and you can make it your own. You can make it your own identity, you know?
Francis, off the back of that, we just had another question come in that's really fitting, that follows that one nicely. Yeah. And it would be, what's your advice to a young female hoping to get into filmmaking? And then this is a broader question to everybody, is what is the future for Romani and Traveller women in films, and what would you like to see?
Well, my answer to what's the first part of the question is find a talent pipeline. Explore diversity funding for what you want to do with underrepresented groups. Join industry associations. I joined Women in Film and Television, and I was on the committee that did, promoted more programming for women and getting women into good positions in the film industry. Because I think, as someone said, Hiona, it was you, Teresa, about how women have other roles in the film industry, right? It's not just as a writer or a producer, you know, or director. There are other roles that we can have. And I think the thing to do is to make sure that you get into a network of other women, feminists. I did that with lots of feminists in my network. And gradually you can find your way into a position with their help and support, because you need that. And you can make sure that you're well positioned to then give someone else a hand up.
Thank you, Francis. Would anybody else like to respond to those questions?
Again, just echoing what Francis said, you know, when you get to a position, when you are somewhere, touch wood, you put the ladder down instead of pulling it up. You know, you put the ladder down, that's all you can do. There's an organisation that I'm aware of called Creative Access, which are online, which have lists of opportunities, which, you know, are in all fields of creativity, not necessarily film, in publishing, in, you know, lots of other areas as well. They're very useful. And yeah, but just put the ladder down. and I've been really lucky, you know, I've met some very encouraging women who've just said, but again, what Frances said, go for it, go for the power, go for what's the worst that can happen. I mean, it's taken me quite a while to get to the point where I could say what's the worst that could happen, but once you get into that mindset of you know, what's the worst that can happen, go for it, and then just do that.
Thank you, Teresa.
I would agree with everything that's been said, and also trust your body, trust, you know, that little voice. We all have it, you know, when you're watching something and you know it's not right, but because of whatever circumstances we perhaps don't say it, or we're apologetic for that opinion, and it's, you know, how can we work more efficiently? So just trust. It remembers, and it protects you. So also, you know, I would just also, when, you know, we're thinking about whether it's drama or filmmaking, you know, your body's involved. What you're doing behind the camera, what you're feeling is so important, and that translates in front or on the radio and your voice. And so, you know, think about that, and how can you take care of yourself also off camera, because I think that's really a huge part of being able to say, well, this is what I'd like to see in front of the camera, and this is what matters to me now, and to not be apologetic about that. And you are probably going to offend someone, but if the intention is not to offend, then it's also good to say sorry, or to just engage in that conversation with someone. And you might not make you won't make everyone happy, but that's okay. If you're clear why you made that, or why, you know, you went down and started a podcast or a project, I think that, yeah. Love that, Teresa. Send the ladder down. I love that visual, you know. It's like, yes, you know, why can't we stand next to each other and lift each other? And so that would be my advice, but also what I'd like to see in the future is more of us not competing for these little pots of money. No, you're strong, I'm strong, let's come together and be stronger. And, you know, the body is so important, and let's honor the body and respect the body as well.
We've just had another question come in, and it's, I work at a production company, and we've tried to engage with Romani and Traveller people, but we've had no luck. Do you have any tips? Now, this for me instantly opens up all sorts of questions in terms of how Romani and Traveller people might already perceive the media because of what is already currently out there. But I'd like you to hand it over to any.
There's engage and there's engage. Without going into details, we've had people contact us at the Committee at Equity and say, we've written this. Would you like to sign it off? Would you like to read through it and have a look and just say it's okay? So then we can say, oh, we've engaged with, you know, what do you mean by engagement? How are you engaging? You know, are say this is the work that should be made, or are you bringing a finished project and saying, can you just have a quick look at this for 5 minutes? We'll bung you a few £100, and then say it's okay, and then we can sign it off of we've engaged. So there's engagement and there's engagement. I mean, I'm not attacking the people who've put the question. I don't know who they are or what the question is or what their production company is, but there's engagement and then there's engagement. And again, it's back to that. At what point are you engaging is the question.
Thanks, Teresa. Rosa, you have your hand up.
Yes, I think it's also about trust. You know, you have to build trust, and unfortunately community members have been taken advantage of, or have shared and been told they're going to speak about something, and then what's edited, or, you know, it's edited in a very specific way to fit a very specific narrative, and and engage. And that might mean actually bringing someone in at the very beginning and being throughout the whole process, not just being, you know, that kind of tick boxing exercise. Well, we've done it now. And also it's, a community is diverse. It's not one person. You might want to go to several people. You might think, okay, this might take me a bit of time, but you know, are you willing to really sit down and have an takes time, and that trust has been completely destroyed in so many different ways for so many community members. So it does take time, but it's also possible, and there are lots of people like us and more that are willing to sit down and support and have a conversation. And yeah, I think in Spanish we have a saying, querer es poder. If you want, you can. If you really want something, you can achieve it, you can do it. So I would say that querer es, and it's both ways. It's a conversation.
Thanks, Rosa. And now Francis or Millie would like to respond to that question before we move on to the next one.
Yes, well, I want to tell you what keeps me awake at night these days. I'm actually inspired by the Indigenous First Peoples in Canada, who are emerging from 150 cultural genocide. And we know about these bodies that have been over 6,000 that have been discovered, and we're all grieving that. So I'm watching and learning how they've harnessed every possible platform to do so. And I'm looking for strategies and tactics that our Romani media can adopt in solidarity with these self-same injustices. We share them, we're in solidarity. So what they do is they have a guide together, and I think that's done by Traveller's Times too. They put a style guide together so that you know when you're using words what they actually mean, and when you're using words that are offensive, and when you're using words like just a simple example would be just to call them our native Canadians. Well, they aren't ours. They are a separate sovereign nation within a nation. They've harnessed all these platforms, and if you're in the media or in the entertainment industry, you cannot do anything to portray an Indigenous Canadian without having had this, what Rose is talking about, this long conversation where trust is being built and where there's been enough trust gathered and information, because often you don't get the information. I just had an incident with an American producer without telling me how he was going to use it. So as to your point, Teresa, there's engagement and there's engagement. So I'm actually studying this right now because I think it's something we can get a lot of good learning from. And I'll just leave it at that. It's ongoing, and getting someone in the community of Romani to actually collaborate with you is not going to be easy.
And it says, hello, I'm from another company, production company, and we were looking for professional Gypsy actors and didn't get anyone come forward. Is there a way, or how can we train more Romani and Traveller actors or access them?
Well, I think that we need to actually develop a talent and freelance database. We need to develop a list of speakers and media train them. We need to media train our people. I've been watching what's been going out. I mean, don't forget everything's international now, so we see everything, you know. And I think that our propensity to be secretive isn't helping us anymore. And I think the idea of self-identify life not being able to do that. So I know how painful it is, that you, there's again, it's trust. You cannot trust what you don't know. And if you're not told how they're actually using the material and how they're casting the character, who the writer is, and how often that script's going to change, especially in Hollywood, because you hand your script over, it's over. In UK, it's different. But that's the moves we need to make so that actors will come forward, I think. But I think Teresa's got a lot to say about that.
I could go on for ages about my opinions of actor training in this country. I do think there is an issue in the over, again, a word I can't really say, academicizing of actor training in that to get anywhere near the university courses now and to get anywhere near a drama school, you need A levels and not just from Gypsy Roma traveller communities. There are lots of brilliant kids out there who could go to RADA but don't have 3 A levels, and that's just my opinion on actor training, and that maybe there's a different way of recruiting people into actor training that is not I get it if you want to train to be a dentist or if you want to train to do air traffic control or something like that, but acting is different, and it's A, B and an A or whatever in your A levels. There's no place for you through that, and to get on Spotlight or to get an agent is virtually impossible unless you've gone through that drama training, unless you're fantastically lucky. So I mean, but that's a long-term thing, that's a long-term way at looking how we train actors in this country. In the short term, again, it is all the trust, and and you say again, without attacking the person, want to engage with actors, but then if you want to engage with them and then you hand them the script like Jerusalem or whatever, it's what do you want to engage with them to do? Is it, this script shows stereotypical caricature behavior, but because we've got a young actor who's desperate for a role, they'll take it because it's an open into the industry. It's the whole thing about trust and engagement. There needs to be a database, and I think there is work towards setting that up.
Good.
And yeah.
Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah, I was going to say also, like, leading on from that point, so I agree with both of you. Like, are the roles like specifically just Romani or Traveller roles as well, or are they roles that don't include anything to do with it? Well, because like we've said previously, although it's a part of us and who we are, I think Rosa mentioned, like, that's just an add-on of who we are, that's just a part of us. Like, you shouldn't just employ this gypsy person for a gypsy role. That's the correct thing to do, but also, are there other opportunities there? Are you building a platform for younger, even older Romani people to? Yeah.
Thanks, Millie.
I just wanted to maybe also say, if look for other models that might be out there. Look for other examples like the Independent Theatre Hungary that also have worked a lot with the Equity Working Group. They're doing a lot with different drama, different plays, different ways of celebrating diverse. Again, are there other companies or models that, might be able to sit down and have a conversation and offer some advice that maybe aren't only in the UK? Maybe, thinking outside or a bit broader might offer a different perspective that might help, again, reflect on the environment or the community that you're working within. So that would be something I would offer.
Thanks, Rosa. We're going to bring our panel. But a final question that I'd like to put to you guys, but then also our audience. So feel free to be putting your suggestions or your comments into the chat box as well. Is how do you feel there can be better representation of Romani and Traveller people in film and TV? So basically, I guess what I'm asking you is, what would you like to see more of in terms of viewing people from our own background?
Good question.
I would love to see just a diversity of women doing, but I think Richard O'Neill once said, just ordinary, ordinary jobs, not the criminal, not the stereotypical, all of it, just, I would love to see that. And also for young people and abilities, different body types to be on stage, to be on film. How can we think, and to also think about what are some of the ethical points that, we think about film, just the final product maybe, but what are some of the ethical points we need to think about to get there? So that would be, for me, really important for the next step of what I'd like to see. More people having these conversations, even if they're clumsy. At least we're having them. And so, yeah.
Thanks, Rosa.
I've got a bit of a fantasy in that a soap opera in this country will have the bravery to, they're all family run. It's like EastEnders are groups of families, Coronation Streets are groups of families, that they just have a gypsy or a Roma or a traveller family who live there, who are a normal family on a primetime soap. And they're develop and they're embedded into those soaps. And when that happens, then I think you'll be hitting some kind of, I was going to use the word normality. I don't know what normality is anymore, but if a soap opera had the bravery to do that and not have them as someone who's there for 6 weeks and cause trouble and then go, but a long-term investment in that family in the way that they bring other families in for years and years and years in a soap.
I'd love to see that too. where the focus is just on this person as a person going about their daily life, and they just happen to have this ethnicity, like Rosa said, as this add-on. Yeah. I'd just like to, before I come to Millie and Francis, I'd just like to say a comment that's come in on the chat box, and it says, just to say that a proper database and a support network for the film and TV industry would be, don't feel that we can come forward, so safety in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So
good.
Thank you for joining us, and we're so happy to have you being part of the conversation and viewing this online.
Yeah. Can I just add, whoever it is who doesn't feel that they can come forward, please come forward, contact us at Equity, because we're there, and we are, we're small in number at the beginning because we're relatively new, but we are so there and so want to support anyone, contact Equity, we're there.
I'm retired now, so what I'm doing a lot of is just like bucket list things that I've always wanted to do. And one of the things I do is I mentor young women filmmakers and broadcasters. And we cover some of simple, easy stuff that really, I don't know if they teach it in the universities, but, how do you write a treatment? What about a production? How do you put that together? How do you do your own marketing, what's the format, and I have a partner who does all the technical stuff. I could do it, but I prefer to do one-on-one. And what I'm finding with young women, and what I'd like to see more in the Romani way of doing things, is that that there is a network of mentors that can sit down and go through the fears, go through the self-limiting negative in the culture, and make sure that they get all the support and help they need to go out and just go forward with their product and do it in a professional way. Because if you're doing any proposals, I mean, writing a proposal, there's a basic set of rules for that and formats. And then if you're going out there into the industry and trying to pitch your idea, and when you're looking professional, it's harder for them to reject you. It just is, So I think what I'd like to see are more content developers among Romani women who I know have got some great ideas. I've been working as a gatherer of curator of women Romani poets, and we have found around the world over 50. Why not take one of your stories and turn it into a drama, or in your case, Teresa, a soap opera? Is there enough in your family stories to warrant that? So that's my hope.
Thank you, Frances. And it sounds like stronger networks of mentoring and supporting younger stage filmmakers, and to have some of that, a network almost.
Yeah, and give them the professional tools to be able to go out.
I think I'd like to see the belief that we can and that we will, and to make our voices heard and to feel like they are listened to. Also to just, again, like to see positive representation, good representation of normal women doing normal things, or normal young girls doing normal things, not being over sexualized, not being like other people to communicate with us. I know that we've spoken about an issue with trust, but the more people persevere and aren't afraid to contact us and to consult us about what's going on, it will only build the bridges and make everything stronger. Also, for younger women to feel like they have the power that they can, and to are capable of doing it. And I've already found through even this talk today that there are so many stronger women out there, strong Romani women and Traveller women, that will support you and will give you the guidance that you need. You just need to have the strength and the steps forward to ask for it, because you're worth it to do it. So
Thank you so much, Millie. And on that note, that bombshell, I think we should bring have joined us tonight, and also to all of our audience who've been popping in their questions to the chat box. We've been glad to have you with us. I'd just like to say a big thank you also to the Travellers Times team, Mel and Julie behind the scenes, and to all of the support, and to everybody who showed up tonight. I'd also like to say that from this event we've put together, we'll put together all of the suggestions and recommendations that have been suggested by yourselves and the audience. And if you registered via Eventbrite, you'll be getting a summary, and hopefully we can take next steps. And the future is bright, the future is bold, the future Romani women are taking over the world.